Мы начинаем работу круглого стола, посвященного вопросам модернизации нотариата, российский и зарубежный опыт, предполагая на сегодня с учетом того, что присутствует...
We have our colleagues from abroad, from France and Switzerland, Kazakhstan and other states. I hope we'll be able to have a dialogue and compare the state of modernization we have here in Russia and in other countries. On the other hand, we hope to see how we can transfer to to make our paperwork electronic based, to electronic registers, electronic information exchange with state and governmental bodies, electronic commercial structures. And this e-doc exchange experience we have.
Слева от меня господин Декор.
The speakers of this panel, Jean-Paul Decor, sitting to the left of me, is the president of International Notariat Union, and he will be presiding. To his left is Jean Tarad, president of the highest Council of French Notariat. Michael Müllner represents Austrian Notarial Chamber. Asel Janabilova, who is the chairman of the Kazakhstan Notarial Chamber. Eduard Makhnonosov, director of the Foundation for Innovation and Information Technology at the Russian Notary Chamber. Ms. Melnikova, director of the Department of Legal Aid. And my name is Maria Sazonova, and I'm the president of Federal Notary Chamber of the Russian Federation. I've caught a cold, but I hope it won't be reflected on the quality. Before we start our dialogue, I would like to say a few words about modernization of the notariat in Russia. We started to modernize the notariat in Russia not long ago. 3-4 years ago, we created our own authenticating center, Foundation for Innovation and Information Technology. All notaries in Russia now have electronic signatures. And thanks to that, we have established cooperation with certain governmental bodies, and my colleagues will give you more details about it. But I'll just give you a skeleton. With certain businesses and commercial groups which have risen the quality of notary services, and nowadays Russian citizens have better access to information and can do it faster and in a simpler way. Over the past few months, and we have been experimenting on creating an electronic register to register notary deeds, and some notaries are already using this register and will attract more participants, and eventually will have a single unified register of notary deeds. Many of our colleagues would know that we have passed law number 166, which provides for electronic databases, registers for powers of attorney, for marriage contracts, for inheritance, and all those kinds of deeds and contracts. And as a result, we already see that introducing telecommunication, information technology into notariat not only happens in the notary chambers, but also in the notary offices. All Russian notaries are linked to the information system. We don't need to use mail, and these IT services have replaced our old-fashioned ways of communication. In the nearest 3-5 years, Russian notariat will be able to build up a system of electronic communication and interaction with all the bodies we have to interact with. First of all, with the state bodies which own state registers. And in this sense, a new law on notariat will play a major role. It provides for the access to all electronic registers for all the notaries. And it's also very important that the notaries now have access to the state system of electronic interaction. Through this system, we'll be able to gain information from the migration services. We'll work together with the legislative bodies, and because the information we get from these bodies influences the quality of the notary deeds, and the authenticity of influences the authenticity of the documents that we issue. A very important role in the development of IT was played by our colleagues from other countries, and they have shared their experience in introducing IT in notariat in France, in Germany, and we've been to various conferences in various countries. And today for ourselves, we can say that on a certain number of points, I mean, in certain cases we are lagging behind, but in a way we're developing quite fast. And the idea of this round table is to pay attention to the countries that can teach us something we haven't done yet. And on the contrary, and vice versa, we could be of help to our colleagues providing material for research and the database that Russian Notariat is working with. I should also emphasize the role of the Ministry of Justice in the IT development. We have drafted a law on e-documentation, which is now being passed in the government, and we hope that it will be passed by the end of this year. Everything we do in IT is not provided for by legislation. It's all done as an experiment, not to lag behind the existing situation in economy, in social sphere, and Ministry of Justice supports us, and we are grateful. We're happy that this document was drafted together with the department which is responsible for IT in the Ministry of Justice. And if you allow me, I will pass the word to Eduard Mokhnonosov, who is probably the best man to ask about modernization of the Russian Notariat.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to structure my presentation by elaborating on the points that Maria Sazonova has just described. Innovations and high-tech in Notariat is not an objective on its own. It's not something that we do because we follow the fashion. It's an objective need, and it's an area where we can see very large advances over the past few years. There are a number of specific objectives that I would like to highlight, but most importantly, we strive to make sure that all notaries receive information from reliable sources when they perform notary acts. We want them to receive this information very quickly, very reliably, and that, I believe, would ensure an increased level of security in the legal sphere, and it would make it more convenient both for the notary and the citizens. There are several different levels of interaction, different areas where we concentrate, and this number of these areas grows with years. Today, one can get information from the single register of legal entities, and every notary can access this database. There's a single register of land and real estate titles, and we have plans to create a database that would help to check the validity of passports that are presented to notaries. This would be done together with the Federal Immigration Service. And this means that the notaries would be able to get this information themselves and would not have to apply for information to the relevant authorities. So this is there's a high demand in the society, and there is a need to ensure more efficient interaction between different bodies and authorities. About a year ago, we were joined to the first non-government database of electronic interaction. We now exchange information in a standardized format with government bodies. The next area is about the automation or computerization of workplaces. Our approach is that the more information is introduced into the documents automatically, the less mistakes and errors will occur. And obviously, it will take less time to prepare documents. There are advantages in this not only for the notaries, but also for the ordinary people, because the productivity of the notary labor increases. Obviously, the time that it takes for a citizen to use the notary services decreases. Another area that we concentrate on is the setting up of the single window system. There are a lot of advantages here. Now, when someone goes to the notary public, the notary can offer different services, but the one window concept means that the person will not have to go to other bodies. For example, the legal entity registration service. At this point in time, it would be enough to go to the notary. The notary will generate relevant documents. They will be sent to the registration chamber, and the notary and a normal person, an ordinary citizen, would not have to leave the notary public's office in order to have the entire process completed. And that should be possible everywhere in the Far East. And if you are in the Far East, you would be able to register a legal entity, a company in Moscow. You would not have to travel across the country. So obviously there are financial advantages. There's yet another area that I would like to talk about. This is something that we're still working on. This is still in the pipeline. And the reflection of this work can be found in the legislation of the Russian Federation and the law on the Notariat. We are at the stage when the information society is developing very fast, and we are in the transition from the traditional document management to the electronic document management systems. And we believe that very soon a new notary service will be in high demand: electronic document notary services. The legislation of some countries, for example, Ukraine or France, regulates electronic document flow. We have some gaps in the legislation in this area, unfortunately. But there is an obvious trend in the society as well as among the government authorities that demonstrate that very soon we'll be getting there, because the advantages are quite obvious. And a lot of agencies believe that e-document management systems would be a very efficient tool that would be able to combine the advantages of the traditional document flow and the electronic document flow, and would ensure more efficient operation of various government bodies. If we talk about the Russian Notariat, we believe that modernization is not something that can start, can have a start date and an end date. This is a continuous process, and it doesn't have an expiry date. We understand that the various decisions that are taken by the various organizations related to the notary profession, we want these decisions to be relevant and to reflect the trends that manifest themselves in the profession. We don't want to reach a specific formal result. We want to create conditions that would make it possible for the notaries to feel comfortable about working with electronic documents. We want the electronic document flow to be very convenient for ordinary citizens, and that the notary profession participated in the development of the electronic society. And this is where I would like to conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Makhnanosov. Maybe we'll start with the right-hand side and listen to a small presentation about the situation in Kazakhstan, for us to be able to compare what we have in the CIS countries. And I would love Maria Arkadievna to say a few words, and then we'll give a word to the left-hand side. Do you mind? I hope you don't. Ms. Melnikova? Oh, thank you. Ms. Marzena Bilova, sorry. Dear friends, dear colleagues, Kazakhstan feels honored to be part of this forum. And we have a second year of this Notariat section, and it means that Notariat plays a very important role in the legal sphere, and I'm sure that the Notary Chamber plays an important role in this process. We have exchanged, we have shared our experience, we visit each other going to conferences, and we share our experience. Speaking of the electronic regulation for Notariat, this issue, this problem has been solved in Kazakhstan in 2009, once we had e-government. We linked our notaries to this electronic document management, and starting from the year 2010, every notary has an electronic register and submitting all the information to this register about all the notary deeds they perform. And probably this is, I mean, the Notariat in Kazakhstan is the only body that has access to all governmental database. I mean, migration service and register for companies and various entities and legislative database. So people don't need to go anywhere else. They come to the notary, and the notary enters their ID, and they will see all the data available for this physical person or an entity. They will see their status, whether he's capable of legal deeds, and all his IDs, including international passport, whether his marital status, and if we need to check the information for an entity, for a company, we have the data for this company immediately. The same refers to real estate. We put in, we submit their number, their ID numbers, and you have all the information about this real estate. Whenever, no matter where you are in Kazakhstan, and you can get this data anywhere. And as Eduard has mentioned, well, there's no expiry date, as he said, and we keep improving the system. If now we are through negotiations with the Ministry of Home Affairs, we see, if the database is relevant, whether this ID is valid or not valid. And now we can, we have all the data, all the ID data, including a photo. Sometimes you have doubts whether it's the person who claims he is. Because of course we have fraud cases, and we have to check it very thoroughly. And we also have agreements with the Ministry of Internal Affairs. About power of attorney, driver's power of attorney, and those who own and a vehicle should be registered in the register. So one copy of a power of attorney should be registered immediately once they get it. As for the real estate, since January the 1st to 2013, we have solved this problem. People who are buying or selling real estate, they go to the notary. They come to the notary. The notary offers them a draft. If they agree, the notary send a scanned document signed with his electronic signature for registration. The same happens. They pay the fee. A citizen would enter this e-government database. They pay for registration. If he doesn't have to pay for it, then the notary scans it just the same and sends it to the database. He receives a 20-digit ID, and the citizen gets this ID with his electronic address, and all the data about the rights and can be transferred to the citizen, or they can get back to the notary, and the notary will notify the citizens about their rights. The Ministry of Justice is currently developing a concept. According to this concept, next year, from the 1st of January, we'll have no registration. If today the right of ownership starts with the moment of state registration, this new act provides for the rights of ownership starting from the moment the agreement or the contract is entered at the notaries. And the notary will only submit the new data to the register, to the real estate register. It's only a concept. We're only working on it, and it will be adopted next year. Now we're in negotiations with the Minister of Justice to transfer to the electronic register without any paper documents, and from the next year, the Kazakhstan notaries will only work with the electronic register. Well, so I mean, if the power of attorney has been revoked, all the notaries see the very moment it has been revoked. If a citizen has died, automatically all his information goes to the register. The state register sends this information to all the notaries, and it's all done electronically. And information about wills, about about any kind of search you might want. It's all kept in an electronic form, and the notary can only get access to it using their unique electronic signature, which has to be reissued every year. We're improving our electronic notariat. From October the 1st, we have unified forms all over Kazakhstan. And maybe my Russian colleagues don't know it yet, but we've had an issue. I was to speak about transnational, transborder interaction. As for the documents we issue in Kazakhstan, our notaries, our laws on notariat have changed, and our notaries use the national symbols. Now we act on behalf of the state. We can use state symbols. We didn't have this right, and thanks to our Minister of Justice, we have been discussing it for a very long time, because we even went to the Constitutional Council. At present, our notaries work legally, and they act on behalf of the state. And this is, in a nutshell, my story about the Kazakhstan notariat, and we're always open. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them, and we're ready to inform you. And we invite you to visit Kazakhstan to see how our IT works with notariat. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you. I have a question. Perhaps someone has questions to Mr. Makhnanosov or Ms. Zhanabilova? No questions, not yet. Okay, let's move on then. Maria, can I ask you to say a few words on the topic? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part in the forum. And even though the forum is organized by the Ministry of Justice, I'm very happy to see that such an important topic, such as the modernization of the notariat, has generated such an interest. I can see a full room of people. We have a lot of guests here. And it demonstrates that the notary as a system advances very rapidly, and it is one of the professions which is interested in going hand in hand with the latest developments. In a good sense, the notary profession should be a conservative profession. But it is also good that the notaries themselves find it in themselves to develop, to modernize, to keep up with the times. So even before legislation was adopted on electronic notarization with the use of digital signatures, you have heard already that this law has already been sent to the government so that the government could, after a review, send it to the State Duma. We very much hope that this law will be adopted rather soon. This will provide for electronic paperwork from the courts, from the judiciary, and the notaries. Independent operation, independent modernization, working on the new electronic database is a basis for future legal operation. We are changing our work from the traditional conservative paper-based work to the new format. I know that the majority, an overwhelming majority of the notaries, over 90% of notaries, have already received the digital signatures. They are registered with the electronic system of the Notariat. Unfortunately, not all the regions can work independently in the system. But the most important thing, something that is worth mentioning, is that the Notariat and the notary profession is not something that develops on its own, because we have to ensure the stability of the workflow, the stability of commercial life. A lot depends on how often people will need the use of electronic authentication methods. And this is especially important in the area of real estate. We are still arguing as to whether or not the real estate deeds have to become paperless, or they should go back to paper-based. But in any case, the notary profession should enjoy the benefits of the IT advances, and I'm very envious of our colleagues in Kazakhstan. They can get registered very easily by clicking their computers. We hope to be there. And it is very especially important when you want to authenticate the person, and you want to identify the person and make sure that the documents are authentic. And all of these databases, all of these electronic resources ensure that the deeds are authenticated in the right way, in the correct way. And I think the society, as a participant in this operation, should welcome this. Another area of cooperation which we believe requires active involvement of the notaries is cooperation with the tax authorities. As soon as we initiated this cooperation, we saw some positive results. Companies, participants in the market, the tax authorities themselves have noticed a dramatic drop in the number of illegal acts in this sphere. We have seen a reduction of radar-related activities. I hope that with support of the Ministry of Justice, with support on behalf of the legislators, the notaries will, in the future, use as many new technologies as possible. Thank you. I think if we compare the two presentations about the state of affairs in Kazakhstan and in Russia, we can deduce that Kazakhstan is very much ahead. And we're not only talking about the application of new technology. We have seen from the presentation by Ms. Zhana Bilova that the state of Kazakhstan is ready to give the function of registration to the notaries, because a person can be introduced into the right of ownership as soon as the document is notarized. Ukraine, by the way, has introduced this principle already. Marina has mentioned whether or not the registration of deeds would be given to the notaries. She said that there is still a question about it, and I wanted to pinch her at this moment because I think that this is a must. We can see that Ukraine, Kazakhstan are more trustful towards the notary profession, and some of the government functions, some of the state functions are easily transferred to the notaries, and the positive results are here. I criticized many of our notaries because the psychological barrier is still there. They're not yet ready to apply all the modern technologies. We know some of the notaries who have received the right of digital signature, but they just put the files, so to speak, into the table. They put it on the back burner because there's no demand in that. What's happened in Kazakhstan? They cancelled paper-based document flow. They stipulated legislatively that notarized documents should be paperless. So in this respect, again, Kazakhstan is very much ahead, is the pioneer. And people keep telling me that very, very soon we will have to move forward. Very, very soon the notaries will leave the old practices behind. Let's not wait for the 1st of January 2014. It is quite possible that the President of the Russian Federation will sign a document that would cancel, or that would stop paper-based document flow between the government authorities and government bodies. So what happens then? As notaries with a digital signature who have never used it and has no experience of using it, we would be left behind. This shows that we have a country where everybody uses the right of electronic signature. And now I would like to give the floor, as well as the right of moderation, to Monsieur Decour.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank you for inviting me to this meeting about the modernization of the Notariat. And I would also like to thank you for what you're doing to make our profession represented at this forum. I would like to greet representatives of France, our French colleagues and friends, and I would like to pay respect to Jean Tarade, who is presiding over the High Council of the French Notariat. The International Union of Notaries, as its leader, I feel happy because all over the world, Notariat managed to embrace new technology. And when I hear our Russian and Kazakh colleagues saying, we see that it's a process that has become global. It's very logical, and because notaries are very active actors of the social and economic life, and the modernization that we are undergoing it means we want to serve our citizens, we want to serve our state, and to serve common interests. This modernization, well, it frightened us We were afraid of it. We were afraid that we were going to lose the paper documents which we were used to, and it's this problem. I mean, 20 years ago, Gutenberg spoke of this problem. No, the same problem was raised when the first books appeared. For example, when the books started to be printed, and people were afraid that they will eliminate other types of culture and legal culture. We managed to provide to secure the documents and to provide security once we transferred from paper to electronic form. And since we managed to do it, and since we guarantee the security of this transfer, there are no other obstacles to for this modernization of Notariat. And this modernization is taking place everywhere, also within the framework of our union of Latin notaries. And starting from the 1995, these activities carried out by Ms. Sazonova personally. And since then, I mean, all the notary communities all over the world, we understand how important this modernization is, and we're trying to create a global network of notariat using these know-hows and using IT. Any Russian notary can provide their address and their colleagues' address, and they can get access to their colleagues' data everywhere in the world. So this first stage of modernization meant creating this global network of notariat. We have developed this project, and we're thinking of providing the security of how to make this network secure, and we realized we could have a certain electronic print, electronic, and this electronic device will help us to make it. Decal will help us sticker this label which will enable our clients to simplify a lot of their processes. This electronic signature and this electronic label enables us to register these documents, and that has been mentioned by our Kazakh colleague as well, and our French colleagues will also tell you more about it. These are all very important aspects. However, we need to say that if we're talking about the whole world, different countries are at different stages of this modernization, and this is what our roundtable discussion is meant for. As our chairwoman has mentioned, probably those who have experience in this area should share it with the rest, and I'm glad to. So that's why I accepted your invitation so willingly, and I'm glad that Monsieur Tarad and our colleague from Austria agreed to share their experience in this area. Like we heard presentations of Russia and Kazakhstan, which are also very active in this respect. And I would like to thank Madame Sazonova for what you're doing as the president of the Federal Notary Chamber of the Russian Federation, and I'm glad you have good relations with the Ministry of Justice, and I'm sure you'll be very successful. And now I would like to pass the word to the president of the High Council of French Notariat, Jean Tarad.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to join in expressing my gratitude to Ms. Sazonova for the quality of relations between the Notary Chamber of the Russian Federation and France. We have been enjoying good relations for a long time, and we're not talking about only professional relations, but a real friendship. We always are happy to find ourselves among friends. I'm going to talk about more technical issues, because I would like to give an overview of what is happening in France in terms of electronic notarization. Let's back in history. Let's look at the law which allowed to use electronic technology for notarization, including electronic digital signature. It says that regardless of the format of the document, the electronic signature can be used, and because of that, notarized or authenticized act, be it through the notary or a document that was registered by a civil servant, these documents can be now prepared in electronic format. We were able to resolve various technical issues with regard to the electronic notarization and authentication of documents in order to ensure that our citizens understand that these documents are highly reliable and that they recognize their individual will. This may demonstrate the capabilities of the notary profession. We have always strived to be at the foreground of technological advance, and we've always tried to keep up with the demands of the state and modernize our work. So what are the stages of the authentication and notarization of electronic documents? The first act of that kind was authenticized in 1989, and this showed that this document can be secure and can operate in an electronic economy. Compared to paper-based documents, this is a very secure form, and we are now transferring to the paperless economy. It also demonstrates our capability of adapting to the new technology. I would like to mention a few pieces of legislation that made it possible to move forward in this sphere. One of these pieces I have already mentioned. This is a piece of legislation that was adopted in the 90s. It was Article 13163, and it's stipulated that electronic document has the same force as a written document. The only conditions were that this document can be securely stored and that it is notarized or authenticized by an authorized person. In order for this document to be admitted as evidence, we needed another piece of legislation, and this legislation provided for the same force of electronic documents as written documents. So we have the next piece of legislation that provided for the force of evidence of electronic documents. Among the advantages of electronic documents, the conditions for storage, because all the documents signed by the notary have to be kept for at least 75 years in order for the clients or their children and grandchildren could have access to this document at any point in time. The Central Electronic Archives can store thousands of electronic acts. It receives thousands of them every year, and it may store them for 75 years before they will be transferred to the archives of the department. The rapid development of IT requires modernization of various reading systems, and this is only possible through the centralized operation of the organization. The fact that electronic documents are stored centrally in the archives makes it possible to store them securely. The second advantage is ensured access during a long time. This act makes it possible to save time because access has been made easier and because there is a certain speed at which an electronic act can be transferred. So this makes it possible to use it in real estate deeds. And let me remind you that all the real estate acts have to go through the notary in France. These deeds can be registered by the so-called storage facilities of mortgages, and the information can be accessible very soon. The mobility is yet another advantage. The notary can go to the private individual or a company, and the notary can switch on the notebook in a comfortable environment. Obviously, there should be a graphic notebook, a graphic software that would allow the notary to put the signature. There should be an encrypted link up to the professional database through which we connect to the electronic archives. The fourth advantage is the remote notarization. We are not yet there, but I hope that we will see it in the nearest future, so that the notary could authenticate or notarize documents remotely. The notary and the client could be in different places and they could sign the same act at the same time. This could be performed in the format of a video conference with several web cameras set up. This would ensure the exchange of documents between the notary and the client. And another advantage is that electronic document is a sign of sustainable development, because electronic act is a step forward in the development of the notary profession in terms of securing sustainable development. What are the organizational changes that have occurred as we transferred our document flow to electronic format? We have been moving in this area in an environment of trust, and this is a very important condition. There are two main requirements. One, meeting the legal requirements, the requirements of the law, and the second is that all citizens should enjoy legal security, and this level should be no less than the level ensured for the paper-based documents. No less means that the electronic documents may have a higher level of protection. This environment of trust consists of several elements. Number one, a secured private network. Second, an exchange platform. And three, a medium that would make it possible to date and place an electronic signature in accordance with the legislative requirements. In France, we have a network that ensures high level of integration and that is not internet-based. So from the constructive point of view, it already ensures a certain level of protection. This network, which is monitored by the national community, follows the communications between the client and the notary, or between the partners, and it may use different platforms. So between this center and the partner, we have an exchange platform. And this exchange platform is created by the notary profession, by the notaries. We call this platform Planet. It ensures that our common tasks are performed, but also we ensure the individuality and case-by-case approach. There are a lot of problems associated with the routing and monitoring. There are specific functions which we call satellite functions, and they include the verification of digital signature, database access, etc. And what makes our professional community different is that this environment of trust makes it possible to we need to have a specialized medium, special software that would ensure that the correct date is set and that the digital signature is affixed. The notary notarizes documents, and since 1997, electronic, or rather digital signature meets the requirements of the European Institute of Standards. There is a directive 1999-93 of the European Parliament, as well, and there are also French rules of 2012. So how do we organize an electronic exchange between the notary and his partners? We can look at the creation of an electronic act, the act of authentication, as a step forward to the electronic-based document flow. But we have to understand that we may want to use electronic environment for other acts that precede the notarization. They can be; these acts can be stored as a paper document, but also as an electronic document. And if this requirement is not met, then we may want to transfer the electronic document into paper-based form again. So we need to have an interaction with the state, and the initiation of this interaction made it possible for us to make a step forward and make sure that the preliminary stages are electronized as well. So today we have a full-fledged process, and the registrars and government officials are capable of giving us documents in electronic form. We have approximately 15,000 transfers using the electronic network that I have just mentioned, and that's the network that links the notaries and their partners. There's yet another problem which is connected to the right of first purchase, and there are a lot of e-documents here. Approximately 756,000 transactions are made as part of this electronic document flow. Apart from this project, we have another project, and the mortgage-related transactions can be performed electronically. We send relevant documents to the mortgage database and receive documents in electronic format. The Electronic Act also makes it possible for us to receive the information in electronic format and send all the information to the mortgage database in electronic format. That includes information on the real estate transactions, which is mandatory by law in our country. Obviously, these transactions would not have been possible without a secure environment and without the support from the legislature. It is important that these exchanges are in compliance with the legislation so that we could ensure a high level of legal security to our clients. So the documents that regulate the sphere have been changed, they have been revised, and this procedure that I have just described was introduced. Let's look at the City Development Code. It was a number of regulations were added on notaries.
Authenticize the electronic signatures, which will secure for our exchange, which will secure our exchange. And this is about what I wanted to tell you about our experience in this area. Thank you very much. We saw how how much is done in France in regards to the electronic document management. It will be very interesting to know what is going on in Austria, and a colleague from the Austrian Notary Chamber will share his experience. Dear Chairman, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am very glad that I have a chance to be among you and to be part of this forum. It's a great honor for me, on behalf of the Austrian Notary Chamber, to tell you about the latest developments in the Austrian Notariat. My today's topic is modernization of the document management in the notary offices. I shouldn't be talking about, the possibility of printing typing your documents on computer. I should be speaking about other ways of applying IT. To understand what has been done in the Austrian Notariat already and what is yet to be done, I need to tell you briefly how Austrian notaries used to work before their activities were computerized. The notaries, they drafted their documents on paper, but they also received all the information they needed to draft the documents on paper, which means that either the notary or his assistant or a secretary would go to the bodies that could provide the necessary information. First, the notary or his secretary would copy this information, and then they would copy the documents. It took several hours. If the governmental body was in the same settlement, but when this body was in a different city and you couldn't go there to obtain this information, then the notary would have to mail his request and had to wait for an answer for a couple of weeks. About 35 years ago, the Austrian register for the companies and land register and company register were made electronic, and the notaries immediately could receive information from these registers in an electronic form. All the notaries had their computers, and in seconds could have those pieces of information. So they didn't have to wait for some official to process their request, and the information was there ready for them in a couple of seconds. For everyday work, it was very, very important, because in large offices, the notaries, for the first time, were able to receive relevant information from the registers. Before that, the notary could never rely on the information they received from a register, because it sometimes turned out that, if they needed, the court or the register would mail them information from a register before the notary received. But there could be a new submission to the register, which the notary couldn't have been aware of. And you know what consequences it could bring if you're, if you're concluding a buying and selling agreement, when the notary has to ensure that a buyer is buying a piece of land or a piece of real estate which is not burdened with anything. So once it was possible to receive archives, and we send them through our document archives to the government bodies. But there are other requests, other applications which are standard, and when we have to fill in electronic forms, and these forms are later delivered to the archives. So far, the government bodies would process our applications and pass the decision themselves. They would draft the decision themselves. But we're working on a program of implementing a system that would be able to process our standard requests or our standard applications and process them, finally getting a form of a decision, which means that this government body won't have to draft those decisions themselves. They will only check them for compliance. We had a real revolution in the tax sphere, the fiscal sphere. When you buy real estate in Austria, you have to pay tax, and you have to pay this tax before you register your ownership right in the register. Previously, we used to send forms, paper forms, together with the copies of the documents on paper to the tax office, requesting a tax to be imposed. And then we had to wait for 2 months for the decision to be made by the tax inspection about imposing a tax, on tax imposing. We had to check it, we paid the tax, and then we had to wait for another month until the tax inspection would send us a paper saying that they're not against registering, they're not against putting this ownership right into register. It took 3 months altogether. Nowadays, using this electronic tax inspection system, we can impose the tax ourselves. It will be paid in the notary's office, and see if. And the register is there. So it takes only 3 days. You can see the difference between 3 months and 3 days. Using IT only in these areas led to a situation when we can deal with any transaction in 2 days, and it's obvious progress. Well, Austrian notaries have a lot to be done, have a lot to modernize, but it not always depends on the notaries and the notary chamber and on the government bodies and the legislators. A lot depends on the clients. We, for example, since the year 2000, we can provide electronic notary acts without paper, without signatures, without written signatures. And as other colleagues mentioned, you only need to have secure electronic signature. And many people would have this signature already, but the majority of those who have this electronic signature, they don't want to use them. And they keep demanding to have a notary act on paper, because many people still want to see to have it palpable. I mean, to feel it with their hands, and to be signed with a nice pen, which means that not everybody is morally ready to have no paper. I hope it was interesting. I mean, the story I told you was. I realized that you're familiar with this topic, and I would like to ask Monsieur Tarad about the central electronic archive. How does it function? What body runs it? Who uses this archive? How do they give access? The third point, I knew that in France, notaries often act as tax agents. When securing a transaction, they calculate the tax and they transfer it to the tax office. The same is done in Austria, and it has recently been accepted in Ukraine as well. Ukrainian notaries now have the right to act as tax agents, which is also very different from the function of that Russian notaries perform. But we're all united by one thing. This electronic boom started at the same time. I mean, it's approximately in 2008, 2009, 10. So we're all. I mean, we're lagging behind each other, but not everybody had this process at the same moment. And the legislation is very different. Legal provisions are different in different countries. Not everybody has a right to issue both electronic and paper documents. So these are the reasons why we should compare the state of affairs in each country. And going back to my question, Monsieur Tarad, we're very interested. What is this Central Electronic Archive?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. This archives belongs to the Notariat. It was created by the Notariat. It is located in Provence, and we have representatives of this area that are responsible for this particular archives. They created this archives, and we're very happy with the results. It's operating all the time. It operates all the time, and it makes it possible for us to keep all the documents for 75 years and receive excerpts in real time. At any point in time, you can access documents and get parts of documents printed out. In fact, recently we organized an exhibition of notary acts in France. We saw the first act notarized of 1817, I'm sorry. I think that in 100 years, similar exhibitions will demonstrate the first electronically notarized document. You mentioned that right now we act as tax agents. I can add here that the mortgage bureau is monitored by the state, but it also operates electronically. And not so long ago, I had a discussion with a representative of the finance ministry. We have signed an agreement that the tax collection procedure during the real estate transactions and notarizations of the documents will be performed electronically. This process will be finalized in 2014. So basically, by the end of this year, we'll have to complete all the preliminary work. The notaries, indeed, have the right to collect taxes for purchasing of real estate. And as I said, this operation will also be performed electronically. Thank you very much. Perhaps other colleagues have questions, please. As far as I understand, Uliana Novopashina from Moscow, a notary public. The legislators gave you a carte blanche. The they made it possible to make your dream come true. They made it possible to move to the electronic system. We hope that our legislators will meet us halfway and will empower us the same way. But my question is this: who funded this transformation? Who funded the creation of a general register? Who set up the links with the government register? Who provided the notaries with computers and computerized the sphere? Well, if we speak about Austria, I can only say that the major part of all the expenses were borne by the notary chamber. We created a notary bank. So when we authorize various real estate transactions, when we deal with other people's money, then the notary bank, which was created for this sole purpose, have to set up an account. We open this account ourselves, and this is a virtual bank. But there is technical support and the board of directors. Nevertheless, every notary opens up an account, and the notary can use this money. The notary chamber monitors the process so that the notary could not misappropriate the funds and use it for other purposes. This bank earns money, and this money, the yield of the bank, this is where the funding came from. This is an excellent idea. And I think in the situation where economic instability can be seen everywhere, the creation of a notary bank which is registered in Austria, I have no doubt about that, plus the guarantee provided by the notary chamber is something that would work. Unfortunately, we don't have an opportunity of that kind. We even keep the deposits of debtors under our own names, and we cannot organize any financial support to our operations. We also understand very well that Russia is a huge country. Austria is a beautiful country, but compared to Russia, it is a small country. And when we talk about the creation of electronic systems in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, even in Novgorod, this is something that we can do. But is it possible to have an electronic system that would be operational in small cities, Bratsk in Chuvashia? Hard as our colleagues may try, without some kind of a financial support, we would not be able to do it. And I totally agree with the idea of a notary bank. Thank you very much for giving your presentation in Russian. Bravo.
Пожалуйста.
Please, do not forget to introduce yourself. Good afternoon. Aziz Yusupov, the consulate of Kyrgyzstan in St. Petersburg. If I understood you correctly, we can see that the state is transferring the function of registering real estate deeds to the notaries. If I understood you correctly, the Kazakhstan notaries do that, and also the Ukraine is moving that way. I am very concerned with the security of such transactions. Let me give you an answer. In the Russian Federation, we are not considering this possibility. And if we mention this in passing, we only mention it in connection with the idea of setting up collaboration between the notaries and the registration offices, because notaries act as front officers when real estate contracts are concluded, when preliminary information is acquired. And we can see that these systems modernize in Russia, but we don't mean that the right to register real estate transactions will be outsourced. Nevertheless, we should not underestimate the role of the notaries in this area. We hope that we will be heard and that there should be some kind of a reform to ensure security of real estate operations and involvement of notaries in the sphere. Do we have anyone from Ukraine? I think they could tell us more about it. But I would ask Ms. Zhanabilova to say a few words about it. Well, in my presentation, I said that we are working on the concept, just a concept, and it's still in the pipeline. The state, as the Ministry of Justice, is working on this concept. Because right now, the Ministry of Justice is in charge of registration of real estate transactions. And the Ministry of Justice believes that it is important to cancel the state registration. But this is just a concept. Let me emphasize this again. I believe that it would make sense to hear more about it from our Ukrainian colleagues. Unfortunately, they left yesterday. We have plans to visit Ukraine this May. We agreed upon that with the ministry. We told the ministry that we want to go to Ukraine. We want to study their experience. But let me say this once again. We're only working on a concept that was initiated by the Ministry of Justice. Well, just you wait a little bit. I think in the nearest time, Kazakhstan will show their experiences and Ukraine as well. And Monsieur Decor wants to say something about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's a very interesting question, and it has fundamental importance. This idea of a single window principle, which was mentioned in regards to Russia. Notary can be of great help for this single window, but the global trend is to go back to registration. Why? Because when you trust the notary, and we hope that it will happen in Russia also, when you entrust the notary to prepare contracts for buying and selling of real estate, it allows us to see who owns what. As a result, notary can tell the registrational bodies about this transaction, about this contract, about inheritance, and we've discussed it with my friends from Aix-en-Provence. We're talking about the budget reasons. We know that tax avoidance is a very serious problem for all our societies, and in this sense, registration that is done through a window or physically, or can be done by a notary. This registration can be a measure to provide for this part of the state budget and to fight corruption and to fight money laundering and other breaches of law. I will probably comment that the most reasonable system, when we have notarization and registration together, it reduces the need to employ a huge number of state officials and provide and ensures transparency of the register and accessibility of this register. And the situation we had in Russia is now makes the real estate market more criminal, and we as we're trying to show the state that there is no other way but to introduce a notary as a qualified expert, as an expert who could cover the real estate transactions, the real estate. And we're afraid that our government will realize that and pay more attention to the notariat and use the notaries as skilled professionals who can help to solve this problem. And I do hope that we have 450 altogether, but we have a union association of trainees. A member of the notary chamber. I mean, they're also members of the chamber. They stay trainees for 15 years. You can spend 20, 25 years not getting a job as a notary. So they have like association of these trainees, but the young notaries are still members of this trainees union association, and they support those trainees. So this is how it works in Austria. More questions? It's not a question. I would like to make a comment to add one more aspect. On behalf of the Italian Notariat, we have an organization which brings together young notaries in Italy, and we are ready to get in touch with the Federal Notary Chamber of the Russian Federation to establish cooperation, and I will be happy to do it. We do hope that we'll have international cooperation among young notaries. More questions, please? I had a feeling somebody was going to ask a question here as well. Konstantin Ryzhov, Russian Legal Academy. I wanted to ask our colleagues from other countries, well, thank them for wonderful presentations. Do you use electronic signature? I mean, who uses, I mean, can the clients use electronic signature, not only notaries? Do you have this tendency? How do you use this? I mean, do the clients use this electronic signature? Anyone? In Austria, the situation is as follows. Electronic signature can be used elsewhere, not only to sign the notary acts. Austrian Notariat wants the notarization to be an essential element of signing a public contract. That's why we think that even in case an electronic document is signed with an electronic signature, there needs to be a notary present, because those electronic signatures should be presented before a notary, not remotely, because the notary can still verify, authenticate the person who is sitting in front of him. This is what happens now when we sign paper documents. So we don't think there'll be any changes in this sense. Only the signing will happen, not physically. I mean, you won't be signing it with a pen by your own hand, but a citizen would put the card into a scanner and dial the code in front of the notary, and the notary follows each step. In Kazakhstan, the e-government uses, a lot of people use electronic signature with the e-government. Anyone can receive an electronic signature. As a single proprietor, private proprietor can, and they can register as an entity, and they can pay all their taxes. But in in notarization, we don't use electronic signature. We are considering this the use of electronic signature when certain companies want to notarize their sign the documents and send them into our system, and the notary then notarizes it, authenticates it with their signature. But as for the government services, all the documents are sent without notarization. Any company can send their document to a center, for example, tender documents, with their electronic signature without notarization. You can get any information using your electronic signature. You can get any piece of information, but it's not used in Notariat. Thank you. More questions?
Yes, I would like to confirm that indeed electronic signature needs to be used in presence of the notary, because this ensures a certain level of protection. Then digital signature can be used by individuals only in order to perform certain payments, but that's all that is currently done in France in terms of digital signatures. It may be a difficult question. How often your notary documents are recognized by the courts as invalid? Your notarized documents, are they ever recognized by courts as invalid? In very, very, very rare cases. Very rarely would French courts not recognize notarized documents as valid. In 2007, we introduced the digital signature, but we haven't had a single case whereby digital signature would not have been recognized by the court. You would be interested in learning that when the courts will recognize digital signatures and would recognize signatures of notaries, then we would have the same situation as in France. And I'd like to wish good luck and good health to all the notaries. There's another side to this. You can only wish that notarized documents prepared by Russian notaries were as well prepared and as scrupulously checked as the French documents. No questions? Then I would like to thank all the participants in this roundtable discussion. I would like to thank our French and Austrian and Kazakhstan representatives. Thank you to our Russian colleagues for your patience. In conclusion, I would like to say that the problems associated with the modernization of the notariat is important because in the context of globalization, in the context of integration, as we see the activization of transborder trade and various migration processes, we should work together. We should try to catch up with each other and improve our work. And I wish all the best in this area to all of the notaries and to each and every notary individually. Thank you very much.